Hello, my friends. How are you today? We are here with Sue Pellin. That's me. I'm Sue Pellin from Sue Pellin Designs, and today I'm here with you to talk about making a design wall for your studio. So we are going to be looking at making a miniature version of the big design wall that is up on my actually, both walls in my sewing room have these design walls on them. So today we're going to be talking about the design walls and why I use them to design my applique blocks. Then we'll talk a little bit about applique, a little bit about our applique membership, because we do have an open membership for learning how to applique. So if you are a quilter who would like to learn how to applique, I am going to challenge you to watch some of my videos on my website so that you can see an easier way to applique, and you can learn how I applique all of my quilts. Now you see some quilts around me that look a little bit challenging, and these are some of my advanced quilts. But I have quilts that go from the very, very basics of applique, and I have quilts that look a little bit like curved piecing, but they're all done with applique. So I just want to invite you over to my website. So let me share my screen for a minute, because I want to bring you over to the website so that you can see how we're going to get the instructions for making this design wall that I've got all prepared right here on my board to make with you. So we're going to create a design board today. Instead of a design wall, we're going to do a 2x2 design board. That's 2 feet by 2 feet, and it's perfect for designing these gorgeous applique blocks. So over here on my website, you're going to see my blog. And in my blog, there's a lot of fun things that you can read about applique. And just a couple of weeks ago, so if you just scroll down a little bit, you're going to find some different applique related blog posts. And one of these blog posts is to make a quilt block design board to explore your creativity. And if you get into that blog post, you're going to see all about making that design board. And here it talks about where you're going to get the supply list and the instructions here for free. So just go ahead and click on the supply list and the instructions. And I'm going to sign in here as Sue Pellin. I'll put my email address right there, and I'm going to hit submit. Now, when I do that, you're going to get a thank you for signing up to get that free download, and you're going to check your email to get that free download so that you can have the instructions for the design board. So let me go over and see if that has already popped into my my email. So let's see if I can get over there. Trying to get my email up here. Here we go. And we'll find those the supply list for that design board with you. So this is exactly what's going to happen when you fill out that form. It's going to bring in from you a email. And in that email, if you click on that email, it will have the instructions for the design board right there. So click here to download the supply list and the instructions. And there you have it. There are the instructions and the supply list. So let's look at that supply list. The first thing that we're going to need to make our design board is, well, you know what? Let me just minimize this. Let's make this smaller so that you can see me. And we're going to just switch these around if we can. Oh, good. Okay, there you go. So on that supply list, you will need, the first thing you're going to need is a 28-inch square piece of design wall flannel. Now you can see that this is a beautiful flannel fabric. It's gray, so it's a very neutral color, and it's perfect for designing on. In fact, Kay Fassett designed this fabric for when he gives his color classes, because he wants his students to line up their 2-inch squares, 3-inch squares, whatever they're working on, in straight rows and columns so that he can help them with their color choices. And that neutral gray background is the perfect background for looking at colors, for looking at blocks up on your design wall. So as I said, this is a miniature version of the design wall, but this fabric is available by the yard. So you can buy this actually by the half yard on my website, SuePellinDesigns.com. You can get the fabric by the half yard, or you can get a cut that's perfect just for this project, which is 28 inches across. That's the perfect size for this project. So you're going to see the design wall flannel on my website 2 different ways. By the half yard, a half yard isn't enough. You'd have to buy a yard, or you can get the 28-inch panel so that you can just make one design board. So I've already taken that 28 inches and I've trimmed it along the edges. I demonstrate this over and over again. So my fabric gets worn out along the edges and it frays. So I've just cut the edges with a pinking shears just to keep it from fraying, but that's not necessary for you because you're going to be covering up all of these edges. But you can cut this square if you'd like to, or you can leave it a little bit longer. But you do have the 28 inches in one direction. You can leave it longer in the other direction if you'd like to. After you have your fabric, these are the other supplies you're going to need. We're going to get a rigid insulation board from your home center, some T-pins, a rubberized drawer liner, and that's optional. You don't have to have the drawer liner, but it's nice to finish the back of your design board. And you're going to need some duct tape. Well, today I'm going to use painter's tape so that you can see it a little bit better on this flannel fabric, because you're not going to see the gray tape very well. So you're going to be using duct tape. Today, I'm going to be using blue tape so that you can see what I'm doing. And making this design board is super simple. It's really easy to do, and it's probably going to be one of the most frequently used tools in your sewing room. Because whenever you are designing a block, whether it's a piece block or an applique block, you're going to be able to use this design wall. So all I'm doing is I'm taking the 2-foot square piece of insulation board. You can see I've used this one before. It's got some holes in the side, but this is just a 1-inch thick 2-foot square piece of insulation board. And where I give you the instructions, where you go to my website to download the instructions, I take a picture right here of this Owens Corning label so you can find the exact same thing at your home center. So I'm going to put the fabric pretty side down, flannel side down on my workstation. And then I'm going to center that design board. Now I've only got 28 inches, so it's going to be pretty close here on the edge, on these side edges. I've got just that 28 inches. So that's why I left these edges a little longer. I had the whole 40 inches wide, so I decided to leave my ends a little bit longer so I could tug and pull on those a little bit easier and make it easier to wrap around this board. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the shorter edges where I don't have a lot of overlap here, and I'm going to line up my edge on a solid line on the fabric. So I want a solid line here going right along the edge of the board. And then I'm going to look over here and make sure I have a solid line over here as well. This fabric is marked in a 2-inch grid. And so I know that on a 24-inch piece of foam like this, I'm going to have 12 squares, and that's going to be exactly the 24 inches. But remember, this flannel is a little stretchy, so we don't want to stretch these lines out of shape. So I'm just going to pull the lines nice and straight on the edge of the fabric. And let's see, did I get this edge right? I'm going to just turn it over and make sure I've got a line right here on the edge of the board. And I can look at that from the front, and I can put these pins in so that those lines truly line up with the edge of the fabric. Now, some people might be wondering what these T-pins are all about, and you can buy T-pins at the store. I use these in a lot of different ways, but if you don't have T-pins, go ahead and just use your regular straight pins. And if you have a good sturdy straight pin, that works out really well. Now on this corner, I want to make sure that the straight line on the edge is going to come right to the edge of the board. And I want to do this on all 4 sides. And I'm stretching this flannel toward the back until all of the lines line up along the edges. And it's pretty easy to do, but it just takes a little bit of time and patience. So I just pull the flannel toward the back and then put the pin in along the edges. That way I can still lay this flat on my work surface. By putting these into the 1-inch edge, I can still lay this flat on my work surface when I go to do the taping portion of the project. So I'm almost done with my second side. It does take a little bit of time. So while we have a little bit of time, while I go around these edges, I want to just see who's on and who's visiting with us today making the design board. So good morning, ladies. So nice to see all of you. And Darlene, I know that you've been waiting to make this design board, so I'm so glad that you're here. Cynthia, welcome. Nice to see all of you. Hi, Carlene. Nice to see you here. Good morning, Elaine. I'm well. We had a wonderful weekend. We had our great clam boil this weekend. If you don't know what a clam boil is, I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about the clam boil in my newsletter this week. So I have some pictures from the clam boil of how we actually cook that whole New England favorite. So I'll be sharing that in my newsletter. And if you go down to my website to download the instructions for this design board, or there's also some other freebies on my website. You can get a free little mini workshop. You can get instructions, a pattern for that workshop. All of those are free downloads on the website. And when you download those, you're giving me your email address, and you're also giving me permission to send you a newsletter. So I send out a newsletter every Friday. And once you get on my newsletter list, I can communicate with you every Friday and keep you informed of what's going on here at Sue Pellin Designs, what kind of activities we have here on the Facebook Lives every other week. And if you don't want to be on that mailing list any longer, just go ahead and hit unsubscribe on the bottom of each newsletter. So I would love to have you keep in touch with me and make other projects like this with me, or learn how to do beautiful applique quilts. So this last edge is where it gets a little bit tricky. I've already gotten this edge pinned, but I think I pulled it a little bit too tight. That edge is wrapping around just a little bit too much. So I lost the white line on this edge. So that means I need to do a little bit of adjusting so that when I pull up against the other direction, up against those first pins, I can bring that white line all the way to the edge and put a pin in it. So you're keeping that fabric stretched and you're getting all the way to the edge with that white line. Remember, the flannel is stretchy, so you're going to easily be able to pull that white line right to the back. So in my newsletter this week, I'll share some news about, or I'll share the recipe for the clam boil and how we do that here in New England. It's just kind of fun to share some local specialties, some local favorites, and tell you a little bit about my family party that we had. And of course, in my newsletter, it's not about recipes, it's not about family chatter, but it is all about how you can become a better quilter and a better applique artist by keeping in touch. And I share tips and tricks with you every week so that you can perfect your applique skills. So I'm just tearing off little bits of this paper tape, and you could use this paper tape for this step, but it needs to be a pretty sticky tape. Now, even though this is painter's tape, I've used this one before and it's pretty sticky. But what I really recommend you do is grab yourself some duct tape. It's much stickier and much more permanent. And when you use the duct tape, you're just going to cut it in little squares. So what I like to do is just take about a 4-inch section. I cut it right down the middle, and then I cut those 2 sections into squares. So a little bit messy here, but you can see that we can just cut this duct tape into little 1-inch squares roughly. And that's going to give us what we need to start securing this along the edges. And I like to put a little piece of tape on. I start with the corner, and then I'll go back to the other corner, and then just pull this fabric nice and taut. You've already got it pulled in place with the pins, so it doesn't take much just to give it a little tug so that when I pull out those pins, it will remain snug and secure. Now, I said I was going to use the blue tape so that you could see it a little bit better. And let me switch over to the blue tape so that you can see that a little bit better. So just adhere your tape to the flannel. Now realize the flannel is fuzzy, so it's not going to want to stick on that tape forever. So we have to go one step further. After we get all of our lines secured, and I would go ahead and do that all the way around your board, then we're going to put a piece of duct tape over the entire edge to really keep it under control. So how do we do these corners? Well, I left my fabric extra long this way, but on this edge, it's pretty small. So I want to go ahead and secure this edge as best I can. And then in the corner, I'm just going to make a little hospital corner, just like you would do on your bed when you're making your bed, if you learned to do hospital corners when you were a kid. And you can remove some of this bulk if you'd like to on this fabric. You can get rid of some of this, but don't cut all the way into the corner. I'm just making a little cut here so that this piece of fabric lays nice and flat. But I don't go all the way to the corner. I want to be able to secure this down nice and flat here. And then I want to make that hospital corner. And then I'm going to secure it over here as well. So that's all there is to it. You're just wrapping this board just like you would wrap your sheets on your bed. And then once you go ahead and secure the entire edge, that's where your duct tape is going to come in. Now, if you cut these just 1 inch long, mine are a lot longer. They're probably about 2 inches long. If they were just 1 inch long, like these right here, you're going to be able to cover that entire thing with the duct tape, so it's not going to show at all. And we'll secure that down, and then we'll keep going around the other 4 sides in the same manner. So once you do that, this is secure, and it's not going to go anywhere with that duct tape. So you're welcome at that point to pull out all of those pins, and you're going to do that all the way around so that you end up with a nice 2-foot board with that flannel wrapped tightly around the edges, and you've got a beautiful design board to work with. So where does this drawer liner come into play? Well, I've already got a board that's already made, so let me swap out for that one. And this is my useful one. This is the one I use all the time. And I want to show you what I've done on the back of this. So I have taken the drawer liner and I have secured it in place with some glue. So I've taken that drawer liner, just cut it big enough to cover over the raw edges and laid it out on the back of the board. Now I put mine in place with some pins, but before I do, I need to secure it down with some thick, tacky glue. Now I like to use Fabri-Tac. It's a really nice, thick, tacky glue, but because this drawer liner had been rolled up, I'm going to need to put something really heavy on top of it and just let that sit for a few hours to let the tacky glue dry. Now, why do I like to use this drawer liner? Because it prevents that from slipping. Now, that board's not going to slip when you're using it on your table, and it makes a really nice surface to work on. So when we did this with you once before, you didn't have the foam board, so you ended up using a framed cork board that you had on hand, and it worked beautifully. What a great suggestion. I love that. That's wonderful. So was that Darlene or was that another Facebook user? So that's a great suggestion. You could use a cork board, but I find that these insulation boards are super inexpensive. And once you have this done, you can pin right into that board. So let me go ahead and grab one of my blocks that's going to go up on the wall behind me. It's one of the blocks that I've been working on for the Vases quilt. This is one that's still in progress. I still have some stitching to do. This blue line is stitched, but this pink line right here, these pink petals, and all of my circles still need to be stitched. That's why this one's not up on the wall behind me yet, because it's still being worked on. But you can see that even when I put this up so that I can look at it from a distance, it is holding on beautifully. Everything sticks to that design board. Well, so much for that. When your block gets heavy with all of this applique on it, that's why it's important to be able to put your pins in so that you can secure a heavy block that has all of its applique pieces and all of that applique stitching. You can secure that down. Now, this is not a block that needs any more design work, but if I were starting with a new block, let me put a new block fabric on there. This one's pretty big. This is a bigger block than what I'm working on right now. The blocks that I'm working on the wall behind me are 18 inches square. This is a nice big 21-inch square, and I cut these out for my Clever Clamshells class. So when I made Clever Clamshells, I started with a block that was this big. It's a 21.5-inch square to start with, and then the pillow top fits on a 20-inch pillow form. So this is all ready to go. I can design my block here, and as I'm adding rows, I can even iron right on this board. This is an insulation board, and it can handle a little bit. Let me just plug in my iron here. It can handle a little bit of heat. Now, it's not going to melt, but I wouldn't really overdo it, because what I have found is that my board has compressed just a little bit. I feel like it has, especially around the edges of the board. You can see the edges are rounded a little bit. You can also see that I didn't end my board with a straight line. It's about a 1/2 inch away, and I wish I had paid more attention to that, because when I go to line up my pieces, I can see those lines right through the fabric. And if I have my line squared up exactly, then I can use this for a measuring board as well. But here we go. We're going to use it as an ironing board. So as we're putting on our applique pieces, we can just tack them with the tip of the iron or iron them right in place once you want them to be a permanent part of your quilt. So let me get back on the screen here. Let me get to be the big one. Let's remove this one. There we go. So when we are making a big quilt like this, I do the blocks one by one on the design board. But when I have all my blocks made, I want to put them up on a big design board. So how did I make this big design board? It's the exact same process. Now, I have a YouTube video on making the big design board. On this design board, I have a seam right down the gray fabric, right down the middle. And I matched up those lines along the seam perfectly. And I sewed right on a line so that that 2-inch grid is continuous. I was very careful to sew right on those 2-inch lines. So you can make a bigger design board than the fabric is in width. So the fabric comes about 42 inches wide. So I cut this design board down. It started off as a 4-foot by 8-foot rectangle. And I cut it down just enough so that I could make that seam perfectly. Then I measured the fabric and I made the design board just 2 inches smaller than the fabric so that I could pull it around to the back, line up those edges perfectly on a straight line, and then easily tack that up to my wall. And I'll give you a little tip. All I did to tack it up to the wall is I took some finish nails. Those are the ones with the really small heads. And I just tacked it up right through the board, right into the wall where there was a stud. So I just tacked that finish nail right into the stud, right through the design board. And you can even pop that flannel up over those tiny little heads. But you may want to secure it in a different way so you don't see the nail heads. But for me, that was the fastest and easiest way to do it. And it's super lightweight. There's no weight to it at all. Now, obviously, on the one that goes on the wall, you don't need to put any type of backing on it. But here, the one that goes on my table, it's really nice to have that drawer liner to keep it from sliding. Okay, so that is making the small design board. And I'm really excited for you to have a design board whenever you want to make something that you're going to design with applique. And look, this is just the right size for the center of Belle Rouge. So we are starting up a new Belle Rouge program. The Belle Rouge is a 9-session course. You can do it over the course of 9 months because they're nice, manageable sections in a month-long period. But we're going to shorten it. I only have 5 months before I want to start this project as a block of the month. So we're going to shorten this project to just do the center panel and the clamshell corners and assembling this center together. Now, after you finish the center in a 5-month session, and quite honestly, it's not a ton of work when it's split up into 5 months when we're only doing the center section. So it's a very manageable project, and you can probably get all of that work done in our 21 minutes a day. If you take a timer and set it for 21 minutes every day in 2021, you'll be amazed at how much you can get done. There we go. So I got these cute little timers. We'll be using these during our 5-month session to see how you do with 21 minutes a day. You can get this quilt top done in the next 5 months if you spend 21 minutes a day. 21 minutes a day is about 10.5 hours a month. So you could do this in one 10.5-hour session. You could do it in 2 Saturdays or Sundays. You could do it in just 21 minutes every day. And you're going to be able to get the center of this quilt done with all of the instructions for cutting out the leaves, the vines, the vase, and all of the flowers, even those clamshells, with our Leaves Galore and our Hearts and More tools. So these are the Leaves Galore and the Hearts and More tools that we use to cut out our applique shapes so we can rotary cut our applique and get our applique done faster and easier with these two tools and a nice sharp 28 millimeter rotary cutter. So if you are interested in learning to rotary cut your applique shapes, we have a fabulous membership. And a lot of these ladies here commenting are members of our Ahead of the Curve membership group. In that group, you're going to have access to videos where you can learn each step in the process to rotary cut your applique shapes. We have 16 technique videos that you can run through at your own pace in order to learn all of the techniques for cutting with your Leaves Galore and your Hearts and More tools. You can also take workshops with me in that membership. So the membership is a fabulous way to learn how to use Leaves Galore and Hearts and More to make your applique easier. And when you're in the membership, you're going to get to know all these fabulous people that are there to help and support you and work with you during the workshops. It's a really fun group. We have such a great time together. And tomorrow I'm teaching a workshop for that group. And I just love that the members get to take a workshop with me every month. So we stay in touch, we have fun, and it's become a real nice community over on Facebook as well as in our live Zoom workshops. So Belle en Rouge is one option for learning how to use your rotary cut applique tools. And our members get a discount off of the Belle en Rouge 5-month course. It's a 9-month course, but we're going to be working together for 5 months to shorten it and make that quilt a little bit smaller, more manageable, a little easier, and with not as much piecing. To me, piecing is the hard part. The applique is the easy bit in the middle there. Now, I know that I say it's easy, and I truly believe that it is easier than piecing. So it's all about learning how to use your tools to cut out those applique shapes, learning a beautiful buttonhole stitch for applique. And Carlene, I found out the name of that sewing machine. And if you want to stick around till the end, I will go and get that note from my mom. And it is a Brother sewing machine at a very low price point that does a beautiful buttonhole stitch. So she's been using her Brother, I think it's an S6000 to do the buttonhole stitch. And Carlene, I'm so glad that you're here so you could hear all about that. Okay, so I have a guild lecture this afternoon. In fact, it's at 12 o'clock. So I'm going to be signing off just a little bit early today. Normally we run about 45 minutes to an hour, but I'm going to sign off just a little bit early today because I have to clean up from this design board and get over to my guild in Georgia. Now, I love doing presentations for quilt guilds. So if you are a program person for a quilt guild, or if you belong to a quilt guild, and you want to have a really fun and different program, I think you'll really enjoy having me come out and teach your guild rotary cut applique and giving you a little trunk show of all of my quilts. Now you may notice, you may not, because there's a banner in the way. There's a pile of quilts on the floor. I've got to get those quilts up here so we can do a bed turning here on my table. And then I'm going to show that guild how we cut our shapes for rotary cut applique. So it has been such a pleasure to spend the morning here with you, spending time making our CAFE design board. I hope that you are going to enjoy making your own design board and that you'll use it for all of your future applique quilts that you make with rotary cut applique. So Carlene, I'm going to send you an email. I'll let you know, or a text. I'll let you know. Oh, you know what I decided to do? Actually, I'm going to put that in our Ahead of the Curve membership group so that everybody on Ahead of the Curve will see that there is an inexpensive machine that can make a beautiful buttonhole stitch, and anyone can do rotary cut applique. If you have a basic sewing machine with a buttonhole stitch, if you have a set of tools like mine and a 28 millimeter rotary cutter, if you can rotary cut, you can make applique quilts and beauties like these with just a little bit of skill, a little bit of knowledge, and you can gain all of that skill and knowledge by going right to my website and following along, getting on my newsletter list and following along, or joining the membership and being able to take all of our workshops and our technique videos in your own time. I'm glad you enjoyed the demo on the design board. Thanks all for coming, and I will have a wonderful time this afternoon with my guild from Georgia. Take care all and have a great day.